when was the last time that you cried reading a book, or that you had that feeling, when you finish a book, it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna miss this story. A lot of those and more right after our podcast intro. Hello, Carol. Welcome.
Hello.
You see the thing, the mood here, the vibe was very tense, and then we're on. Okay, it's the best way to start. Before we start this amazing conversation, let's try to talk about Lord of the Rings only 90% of the time.
Sure.
I think we can handle that. Introduce yourself, please.
Well, hello. I'm Caroline. I'm here from Campinas. I have studied languages and translation. Now I'm specializing back to university, specializing in book editing and production. And currently I'm working in the book industry.
What do you guys share, that is interesting?
Yeah, there's one, since we're talking about tokens, there's one very interesting thing that some people don't know is that usually people tend to believe that he created the languages, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. But it was the other way around. He was a linguist, a very good one. And he created the languages, and then he created the stories, the books, to give life to these languages.
That I didn't know, actually.
Yeah.
Because it's always kind of mixed together, the things.
Mm-hmm.
And why did you start studying language? What was the story behind it?
My first contact with languages was unexpected. It was an unexpected journey.
Oh my God, I'm excited to talk about it. Okay.
Yeah, I was about to start high school, and at that point, my education in English, the second language that I learned, was very basic. But I got a job opportunity to move abroad to the US.
Ah, nice.
And then I just, I had to learn for that specific moment, because the knowledge that I had early enough to move abroad and start school in another country. So I had to learn the hard way,
So you had you went to another country when you were like journey began. Yeah. Another reference, a difference in terms of reading habits there comparing to what you used to have here in Brazil.
At the time, no, I think I was too young to really differences. But today, now that I work with this market, it's clear the difference that we have from different, not exactly the USA, but for example, a suggestion of age, the indicated age. And sometimes we get a book there that's, this is for like 8 to 9-year-old children. And then when we bring it here, our children are not still able to read those kind of contents, It's like we're a little behind. It's bad to say it this way, but the age doesn't match, because they have a lot. They get in contact and have this stimulation a lot more intensity than we have here in our schools.
A solution, correct me if I'm wrong, Carol, would be do a Dr. Seuss version, Brazilian Dr. Seuss, and incentivizing kids to read as early as possible, maybe.
Yeah.
Because what is the reason they started having contact with books and literature like since the early ages in school?
Yeah, I think the parents have the habit of reading is something that's intrinsic since.
What was the very first book you read that is, oh my God, I love book reading?
The very, very first, I honestly don't remember.
I can share an experience. You tell me if you to do this assignment. You get a book, pick anything you want to read, and books about I really, really liked. And I remember in high school here in Brazil, we had that thing that you had to prepare for the admission, the exam, And then we read the classics, and it was heavy for a teenager, or pre-teenager, 12, 13. Then I remember a few years passed until I found this book that was there, that I don't remember the original title, but it's a Disney movie. It's the Call of the Nature, the Wild Call. The whole book is about the story of a dog, Buck. And you go through the story on the perspective of this dog, and then he started to have dog friends, and he started his own pack. Yeah, I don't know, but it got so stuck with me that when I was finishing the book, I started to cry, oh my God, what a beautiful. this is a very unique feeling that you have. That's why I said that in the intro. When you really find a book that you enjoy, it's like having a friend. And then when you finish, it's like the end of Lord of the Rings, when they have to go to the other lands and bye-bye. It's a bittersweet end. So do you remember, maybe not the first book, but the first one that caused an impact on you? Like,
yeah, that one for sure. Because when I was a kid, of course, I used to read the comic books, like the X-Men and Monica's Gang and things like that. Nice. And then it's amazing.
I forgot that again, because I remember when I was a kid, the classics, they used to be classic. I was a 92 kids because I was born in 85. So it was stuff that was very successful on the 80s. So I remember Labyrinth with David Bowie, dance, magic, dance. And these, I remember because it used to be a lot on TV, It is, spoiler alert, is in the first one, the Falcon, the flying dog, right? It's not a dog, but...
Not a dog.
Yeah. But he has a face that resembles
like a dog. Yeah.
In the first one, he dies and it's something like this, or...
Yeah.
Because I remember it was very sad.
It was, like I said, traumatizing. It's like
Sad.
Mufasa's death, traumatized all the kids.
Oh my god, that one was 95, 94, I guess.
Yeah, but are there more movies of The Never-Ending Story?
There's two, right? But the second,
I've never watched it.
You see? Okay, producers, can you please check if there is a Never-Ending Story? Talk a little about that.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. Tell me about you have a degree in biomedical engineering.
I didn't finish that. It was my first choice, before I started, before I took the languages degree, it was my first choice. I know it's a completely different world.
Because I was preparing to, what about zombie apocalypse,
No.
I talked to a biomedicine. It was very interesting because we talked a little bit about that, but okay, enough of that today. So, going back to what you were saying about the difference between kids there and here, does it also interfere, for example, in reading in general or in the academic results that these kids have? For example, one thing is, I have this kid's book, Dr. Seuss, that they will not keep up. If it's 4 years old there, here's gonna be, 7. But another thing is if you tell me, well, a doctor graduating there will be more advanced than a doctor here because of these basics or something like that.
Yeah, I will not go there because I can't really say that it's right or wrong. But I imagine that it has some consequences, of course, because everything we study, everything we read, we need to get information from what we're reading, right? So it doesn't matter if it happens at a later stage, like we're saying about the kids. A 4-year-old can read the Never-Ending Story and a Brazilian kid can't. No, if this kid has the chance of reading it and really getting the message, it's okay. But of course, reading, the skill of reading it, and not just reading, just recognizing the words, but really retrieving the information and keeping that with you, the knowledge is essential to every human being, no matter when it happens, but it has to happen at some point.
Yeah, and it's like a universal form of communication, like telling stories, for example. You need to pass a message. I can't think in a more effective way of putting this message inside of a story. Like you create the archetypes, the hero's journey, all the things that we love, when was the first time you watched a movie based on a book, and how did you feel? I hope it was not Lord of the Rings, the first.
No, because the Never-Ending Story, for example, is older, but I've watched the movie before I read because I was just a little kid when I watched the movie. Like you said, it used to be broadcast many times on TV. Yeah. And I was around 10 or 11, I guess, when I read the Never-Ending Story. I think it was 11, something like that. So it was later. Okay. So I'm not judging that. But actually, one of my first was The Lord of the Rings because I've watched I was not old enough to watch the first movie when it came out. I remember it was rated 14, I guess.
Maybe, yeah.
And I was like 11. I couldn't go there. So I had to wait, and I started reading. That's when I started reading The Lord of the Rings.
It was a nice thing then.
Yeah, because I had already read because there's a story I need to tell. when I was in school, I was the nerd kid, and I was the library nerd kid. I was friends with the librarian,
Bookworm.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So she would give me the tips, once I started reading things, and she would give me suggestions. So I read the Never-Ending Story.
Okay.
And it was by the same publisher. And back in the days when, I had the flap on the back
they
cover.
had the recommendation.
Read more if you like this.
It's like the YouTube. You are watching something, you see the related content there.
Yeah, but they did that on paper. And Lord of the Rings was there, and the Silmarillion, I guess, like Tolkien books, because it was fantasy, it was kind of the same genre. So, and hey, what about this? Is this? And you're gonna like it. And then she recommended me reading it, and then my cousins, my people that I knew that were older, also liked it. And then, since I couldn't watch the movie, I started reading the book, and that's where my story began.
What part of the book got stuck with you, like very early on? Because, for example, when I started watching, the first impact that I had is like they put everything that I like in one story. Because all the archetypes, everything that I saw there, I like it. The hobbits being like laid back, and they like to drink their beer and celebrate. You have the warriors and the wizards. When I saw Gandalf, I said, it's like Merlin. I started to think about those stories, but. I couldn't blink, watching the movie. It got my attention to a point that was like... And when I read the books, I was already an adult. Like, I had watched the films many times. So I started imagining...
So you've watched the movies before reading the books?
Yeah, I watched it as I read the books when I was... I'm reading again, actually. I'm in the Two Towers.
Yeah, when you like Tolkien, you read it for your whole life.
No, yeah, definitely. That is like this. I have another author that is here, that is Bernard Cornwell. That is the same. But one thing that happened to me is like... I got a little annoyed when I was reading because of the overly descriptive characteristic of Tolkien. Like I walk here to the bakery, take hours, because he describes everything, But maybe that was me, it's not a critic, it's just an impression. And then you kind of get used to it,
Yeah, you're not alone. A lot of people actually drop the book because they just get tired.
Is too much.
No, I know people, it hurts my feelings, but I know people who just, I can't keep up. It's too descriptive.
Have you ever heard that, I couldn't watch because it's too long?
Oh, come on.
They can watch 10 seasons of, Grey's Anatomy, for example, or whatever seasons, just an example. Watch by piece, But what part was impressive for you when you started reading?
When I read
element, yes.
Yeah, for the first time, like I said, I was just a little kid, and it's very different when you read something when you're a kid and when you read it again at a later stage in your life. And I was impressed by The Hobbit and in the Shire because it was different. Like you said, you have everything that you like, dragons in The Hobbit in the case,
yes.
And Silmarillion. But you have everything that you like, but the hobbits were new for me. Like, I've never seen this before. And it's the excessive description works for me in this case. I think it's amazing because it's like a guide. He created this world, a completely different world, and he's guiding you so you feel, that you are inside this world. And I know that some stories, it works better if you leave to interpretation, like horror or thrillers, because you put your own your personal fears and things like that, so it works better. But in this case, I think it's a guide. Let me show you this place. It's like this, so it works for me. And the hobbits felt real, maybe they existed, but no, they didn't. And unfortunately,
who knows?
And the elves, I thought that the elves had they have a grace, right? They're these beings, they're so out of this world.
Angelical in a way.
Yeah, but not just angelical, because they are epic at the same. Of course, depending, like if you read the Dryden Sport, if you read like the Battle of Apocalypse. The angels are amazing. They're epic. They're soldiers, but it's not like the typical religious idea that we have of angels.
Yeah.
And I know it was an inspiration because Tolkien was religious. So lots of things that he believed in or he liked, you see there, but it's not in the face. But the elves, I was just overwhelmed by it. I thought it was amazing. So those were the two things that stuck with me from the beginning.
Nice.
And were the things that I thought they did a good job on the movie. So when I saw the elves on the movies, I was like, oh, thank you. That's nice.
Too early to talk about Rings of Power. I don't want to do that right now.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, now let's... there's a question here from Claudio. How does a book editor collaborate with the authors and the other publishing professionals? And now we can talk about George R. Martin too. But you go first, and then I ask the questions. So how do you actually influence or help, the authors?
Yeah, influence is kind of a delicate word because we don't try to interfere so much. Good editors, we don't try to change what the author wrote. We respect the idea.
Okay.
What we try to do,
even when they suck.
Yeah. First of all, you have to consider that an editor is working for a company, a publisher.
Okay.
And as a company, it would only invest its resources, its people, its money on things that they believe.
This is very good. Allow me, please. Because a lot of people, they say that some authors change it because of the publisher. Oh, the story is not the same. So it's bullshit. It makes
it happens. It happens. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but...
So it's not bullshit.
It happens.
Okay.
But, like I said, if you chose something, you selected something to publish, you believe it's good, it has potential to sell, it has potential to have good results. And so if you think it's crap, you're not going to select it to work it on because it's easier to just hire someone else. Okay, I need a story like this. Can you write it for me? It's a lot easier to do that. So if you're choosing something, you're selecting something, you believe in its potential. And what you do is try to refine it. It's like you're having a jam and you're just polishing it so it gets to its better form. So you present it in its better form to the public. So that's the kind of interference we have. Of course, we get the manuscript and we read it all, and then we make suggestions. Because sometimes, even if the author plans, there are some authors that just write out of a burst of inspiration. Like
Stephen King?
Yeah, like Stephen King, and they don't know how to really finish things. So if you guys like Stephen King, I'm not saying he's bad, but some people criticize.
I guess it's like this. He writes so many things that even if he does a few things wrong or bad, people get stuck with the success and and
it's not bad, it's not wrong, it's just two different ways of writing, and everyone has their own way. And there are even the ones that are the plotters, they plan out everything, every chapter, every step of the story. They're so focused on the bigger picture, and the minor details might slip. And that's where the editor comes in.
Okay.
You read it, so everything.
What about that guy?
Is coherent.
This plot.
Yeah, but it's summer. Why is he wearing a scarf? Is he sick or is it? So details that might slip. You put things together. And sometimes if you're working, not fiction, for example, if you're working with texts that deal with concepts or facts, if you're writing something that involves historical facts or concepts of physics, you need a specialist to take a look on that so you don't spread misinformation. So this is the role of the editor to make this text
double check
everything. And some things that people don't know is that from having a manuscript to really having a product, it's a long process. It's not just writing something, open up a file on Word and type it and correct it and just print it.
I wrote a book in 2019,
really?
But it's a philosophy book.
Nice.
I had this friend, Patty, shout out to you. She was my editor there because she graduated in journalism, has done some courses there. And I said, okay, I need you because you are picky. I'm going to write a lot of things grammatically wrong because, I had the ideas here. And philosophy is like this. I had these thoughts, oh my God. It was like that. And it took more time for the reviewing everything because she would review a chapter, send it back to me with some notes. Michael, you could adapt to this, or this paragraph is too long. Is the cohesion here okay? And so, oh, good. Then I would rewrite, send back to her one chapter, for example. And I think my book had 12, I guess, something like this. So it took a lot of time. This process was more difficult than writing because once I had the idea, I imagined, I want to write a chapter about I don't know, love. And I sit there, got my whiskey, got in front of the computer and started writing. So it makes a lot of sense. Is there a criteria about this, or is it irrelevant? The genre of the book influencing the amount of work that you have? For example, if it's a biography, is easier because the person knows their own story, you just need to trim the bushes, for example. Or if it's a fantasy book, you have loose ends and more characters and, you know, inner plots to develop, or is it irrelevant, the genre?
Oh, the steps are the same.
Okay.
You know, every kind of book has to, if you really want to publish something with quality, the steps are the same. But of course, some types of books are more demanding. Because like I said, if you're working with educational books, for example, you have concepts, you have many things that it's not just, when you're having a fiction story, a fantasy story, you just have to pay attention if it makes sense. But when you're involving facts or you're using it for education, you need to hire specialists to take a look. So it's like one more step, you know, to check if everything's okay. So the more complex the book, the longer it takes to produce it.
Once we have already talked about this, what's wrong with George R. Martin? Why is he taking so long?
Yeah, because
Any theory?
I just think he can't finish what he started. I think he created too many. He tried to be complex and he started killing off everyone because it was fun, but then at some point you have to explain what you're doing, you know, to make sense.
Yeah.
And I think it got so big and so out of hand that he doesn't know how to finish it. That's my view. And now he's like, oh, I am productive. Look, a new book is spin-off or something else, but he's, you know, deviating from the main path.
And based on the history, I guess, if I'm not wrong, you guys can double check it. I guess the first book is from 1995, 6, like mid 90s.
Yeah, from the 90s.
I think. Then 5 books, so it's like 5 years to finish a book. You know, I love the story. You know, I'm not saying that. Oh my God, he could take 40 years, but finish the damn thing. You know. And then I remember a few years ago he released, I guess, after the show was over, the series, he released the initial chapter of Winds of Winter, I guess, and that was it. I heard no more news.
Like, yeah, because probably there aren't any.
Oh my God.
There isn't anything to share, probably.
We were chatting here about the show Lost, and then we were and it feels like it's something similar that happened to him. You know, a lot of characters. It was even to keep track while reading. Sometimes who the hell is this guy again? I had to. Okay, it's the one from that place, and I don't know. But it was difficult, you know. And it was the first book that I ever read in English.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you have that with languages too? Because I prefer to read in English, in Portuguese. It doesn't matter if the story is good.
Yeah, since I like... if the story is good, it doesn't matter which language I'm reading on. But I have this thing that... because I studied translation and I work in the market, so I like to evaluate both of the works, you know. So even if I read a translation, I like to go back to the original. To the original, the original, to see really because translation is like an art in itself. Yeah. And we judge a lot of it, of the translation, but it's so complex and it's choices, you know. So I like to read it to see what kind of choices this person made.
Okay.
So I like to see a little bit of both worlds, you know.
Okay. You also like collecting books, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is it a big bookshelf? Is it a room? Is it a small library? How is your collection?
That's relative.
Okay.
But for a bookworm, it's quite modest.
Okay.
Because I don't really have enough space, you know, to really have... The goal is to have a room dedicated for books, you know. Yes. But I don't really have space for that. So I have... I don't know. They're everywhere in my room, in my house.
You lost count.
No, I have a... There is an app that's like a bookshelf. I think it's called Bookshelf. It's like a... You make your little library. You keep track of all the things you have, you know. Not just for count. Sometimes it's very nice actually, because if you're reading, you can also rate and write some notes on things. So nice. You keep some memos, on the things you have. And when you start having a lot of books, it's nice to keep track of what you have, so you don't keep, you don't buy it again because you forgot
it's
you
like
have
that?
it. No, not for me, but
Do I have number 15 of this collection? One moment. I do. It's somewhere there.
Yeah, so I have around 160 books.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you also have the digital ones in your Kindle, I guess?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I have digital books, but not necessarily the ones I already own. I have to have a copy on
so
Kindle.
You have more there, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about the ones that I can put on the shelf.
Okay, perfect. So that you know, because this is we were actually discussing before. Kindle or physical books. So one thing that actually we have to say is better to have the Kindle versions. That there are no limits. And if you have space to download, legally, then. And then you can have a lot of them. Okay. Yes, hard. Do you have a top 3 or 5 favorite authors? Okay, a part of Tolkien because he's above. Okay. Because I mentioned Bernard Cornwell that I really like. It's another style, but do you have your favorite? Like, if they release anything, you will read just because of the author.
Brandon Sanderson is one of them. The guy, actually, I think he is the fantasy writer of our generation,
Okay, what are the titles? Because I don't remember the name.
He has lots of series. But the oldest one, I think the first one that I've ever seen here in Brazil was Elantris. And but he's very famous now because of The Way of Kings. It's the Stormlight Archives series.
I don't know this one.
Yeah, it's very nice.
What's his name?
Brandon Sanderson.
Okay.
Have you ever, you've probably heard of the show, but have you ever read The Wheel of Time?
I watched just the first episodes.
Yeah, the series it's terrible, but the books are amazing.
We have a problem with Amazon, apparently. I don't know what they're doing.
No, don't waste your time with the series.
Oh, thank you so much.
Terrible.
I watched it at the beginning, but I don't know, it had a Power Rangers vibe for me. The villains and stuff was a little
awful.
cringy.
No.
Okay,
but the books are amazing. Also, books that came out in the 90s, Brandon Sanderson too. It was like this wave in the 90s that just came, but they're becoming more popular in recent years. But The Wheel of Time, the book series are amazing. And he was a plotter, he knew where and there are, I think, 13 books.
13?
Big ones. But he knew he had everything planned out, but unfortunately he died before he could finish.
It's like the author.
But it was finished.
Okay.
Remember I said he was a plotter, so he had everything organized, where he was going. And he gave the papers to, or his wife, I don't know, but the one who finished for him was Brandon Sanderson.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
There is an interesting story with the mangaka, the Kentaro Miura, the author of Berserk. I think manga is not your thing.
No.
But
I've heard about Berserk.
It's very heavy, but it's medieval with demons and a lot of stuff. It's very heavy. It's like a combination of fantasy and horror, Imagine, remember Hellraiser? Imagine Hellraiser. H.P. Lovecraft, and maybe some Lord of the Rings without the cuteness that you have in some moments of the stories, like pure suffering and tragedy. But it's so well written, and the drawings are amazing, that you get addicted easily. What happened? He died, but he told the ending to a friend, another famous mangaka that is finishing the thing. And the thing with Berserk fans is like we receive a chapter every 6 months. It's like a chapter. So we are in episode 378, maybe 77. You guys can correct me if you're watching this. But it's beautiful that the legacy continued because he had everything planned. You know,
that's amazing.
Yeah, you know, George R. Martin. If this ever
notes.
get to you, get a friend, ghostwriter maybe. Ghostwriter, not ghostwriter. Ghostwriter.
Yeah, it's the Marvel.
Yeah, a ghost writer. Yes, you know. But I guess they have a lot of ego, right, to do such thing. Like,
yeah, some people do, but I think it depends on how you see your work, right? If what you've worked so hard to bring to life is more important than your ego, than being recognized for it, then I think it's not a problem. Because you created a world and you know you want people to get in this world, so it's more important to get it out there than just it has to be me, you know.
Yeah. And especially because of this, I guess, in a way, even if it's on a subconscious level, the author, he wants to pass a message with his story. Maybe what he thinks is wrong, right, beautiful, ugly, moral of the story, something like it has to go somewhere, I imagine. It's not just like, just write this ending like the producers of Game of Thrones. But, you know, so maybe just to deliver the final message should have a weight, you know, heavier than being perfect.
Yeah, otherwise they wouldn't choose to publish. They would just write it for fun.
Exactly, yeah, makes sense. Okay, going back to what we were chatting before about the shows there, you know. Do you think that eventually we will not have this type of originality anymore because we are having a lot of or sequels, you know, or remakes that is been happening for a lot of years, you know, because we think remakes is something, I don't know, from 20 years ago, but no, it's older. There's a lot. But recently, I don't know if you had this feeling, maybe you can help me with that. But I had the feeling that we lack originality and we are having a lot of sequence or spin-offs or just remakes, you know.
Again, it's industry, so they're gonna produce what the people want because they want to sell it. And it's very hard to invest money and resources on original things because you have no idea if it's gonna do well or not. You know, unless you have a name behind, like Christopher Nolan, for example. I think he's amazing. Everything he does is like the authors we were saying, he could publish anything, and I would read it. Christopher Nolan is like that for me. But he has a name, you know, he got there and he built his empire. So even if it doesn't make so much sense what he's doing, people will watch it because of his name. Yeah. But the industry itself, it's very hard to invest on something that you have no idea if you're gonna get, you know, some money back and so I think they keep doing the things that are working. It's like a formula. Oh, it's working like this, so let's keep doing this because it's what gives us money back or renown, you know. So as long as people are going there and watching things and getting excited over the same things, we are just going to get the same things.
Okay, so this is a nice cut for us to have. If you are unsatisfied, unhappy with the things, go to the movies, buy the books, get the pirate ones and then you get the original. No problem. Hard. But they need to have this.
Or try different things. Give it a chance, right?
They need to have this feedback, right? I mean, whoever is financing stuff. You mentioned something about the book fairs and a place that the editors will go to find out the trends, you know. Can you give us a small spoiler of whatever trend is coming in terms of fantasy or books or things? Example, we are living a trend going down, but it's still there in superheroes in the cinema, for example. You know, there were a lot of fantasy books being released because of the success of Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings movies, you know, since the 2000s. We had that trend with vampires and horror things like The Walking Dead, Teen Wolf, Twilight, and there was a remake of Interview with the Vampire too, you know.
A series, right?
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but I'll give it a chance.
I think there was the Mayfair Witches too. There was
this one too.
Adaptation by Anne Rice, the same author of.
This is the one with that Alessandra Daddario, I guess, the actress.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw this one too.
But I haven't seen it.
So it was like a trend. I don't know. At least it felt like a trend. What can we expect in terms of content?
What's happening right now that's getting big proportions is romantasy. Have you heard about this
The
genre?
what?
Romantasy.
Romantasy?
Yeah.
It's like the normal woman that fell in love for an elf.
It's like maybe, but yeah, it's a like subgenre of fantasy that mixes fantasy with romance. So because most of the stories we have on fantasy are on the perspective of a male character. Usually the main character is a male character. And we have, of course, it's not the first time we're seeing this with the girls and the lead, but it wasn't so common before. And now the teenagers are reading a lot, which is nice because that's what we need, you know.
Well, that's surprising for me.
Yeah, if you go to Biennale, for example, the last one, it was like packed with people and young people.
Nice.
And that's very nice.
It's not intuitive at all because of TikTok and social media.
Yeah, but there is book talk, I guess. Book talkers, influencers talking about books.
So the digital doesn't have to be an enemy.
Exactly. And so they're getting to these young readers. So young adult fiction now is a thing. And this romance, that's like a mix of, you know, it's a fantasy story, it's a fantasy world, but there is romance in and it's not because, like I said, we had characters, male characters, and it's very usual to have like an Arwen and Aragorn, you have romance, but it's usually, how can I say, you know, it's an element that's just as for support, you know, it's just
secondary.
It's like a reason for the main character to fight and really do good. And now it's the other way around. The trend now is to have a female lead, and she's as strong as anyone else, or she has flaws, and it's just, you know, working through that in a fantasy world, a violent world, or whatever. So I would say that this is the trend now.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. This was a surprise for me. That I thought kids were reading less and less, you know. Okay, going to the main topic we have here about the digital books and the physical ones, you know. First, your personal preference, or it depends where you are when you have to choose one or the other, Carol?
My personal preference is always physical books, paper. There's nothing that replaces the feeling of holding it in your hands and getting that with
the ritual.
Yeah, the ritual, you know, and going to a bookstore and picking one, and then. And now, especially that I work in the area, I have a more critical eye on things because I analyze.
You go to the place. Oh, let me see this cover.
Yeah,
the names,
exactly.
The framing here.
Exactly, and the kind of paper they chose, all the design, you know. And when you're going, if you like physical books, we usually say don't judge a book by its cover. Okay, the most important thing is the content, but. Your first contact with the book, if you're into physical books, is the cover. It's what, if you have no reference of the author
sense. The billboard, they're like, here, read me.
Unless you have a reference of the author or someone suggested it to you, if it's the first time, the first thing that will catch your attention is the design. So I like seeing this. So this is my personal preference. I like the physical books, but I also have my Kindle.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have them both.
With your 1,000 books there in the library. Okay, yeah. I do the same thing. And in terms of marketing now, is there a change because of this? Like, oh, maybe eventually the physical books are going to disappear, or no, it's never. It's like a final thing, or.
Yeah, I think they're never going to disappear. Of course, they're less popular. I think people are reading more from ebooks. Because it's more accessible, it's easy to carry. Yeah, there are lots of things, lots of pros for the digital versions. But I think this will not replace, you know, completely the physical books. Even if it's niched, you know, there's just a niche. Because, for example, fantasy readers, they have it's like this persona. It's very specific. They usually they're picky and they are collectors. So they like. You can see that the fantasy books are usually very beautiful. They have very beautiful editions. So, because they have this sense of collecting, you know?
I have that collector of the Grimm Brothers fairy tales. You know, it's a wine book. All you know what I'm talking about? All the cover is like carved. Oh my God, so beautiful. I saw one from Lovecraft that is the blue one. I think it's the same producers, the same editors, because it's very similar, the type of work. And this one I don't have yet. But I said it must be on my shelf there. It's gonna be amazing, and it's a whole new thing because it becomes like my precious, when you go there.
I know exactly.
Yeah,
the feeling.
What are you currently reading now?
I've just picked up a book. Yesterday I came by it at the bookstore.
Okay.
It caught my attention. It's a sci-fi book by Ursula Le Guin. She's a reference in the genre, but I hadn't had the chance to read this one. It's called The Lathe of Heaven.
Lathe of Heaven?
Yeah, it's a book about a man whose dreams have the ability to alter reality.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Someday he wakes up from one of these dreams and the world is completely changed. And he's the only one with the memory of what it was like before.
Oh.
So that's why you get from the heart, so from the back, so it's no spoilers.
Okay. No, just like that, yeah.
Yeah, so it caught my attention. I started reading it yesterday.
Okay, how far are you?
Not so far because I didn't have much time to go.
Okay.
But it's short, so...
So you read all types of books, all genres. You don't have like only one type that you read more.
My all-time favorite is fantasy, of course.
Okay.
But I guess I didn't finish talking about the top three.
Oh yeah.
And I talked about Brandon Sanderson and the other one, Edgar Allan Poe. I love him.
Okay.
It's like Gothic. I have this thing too, and Dostoevsky. I love Russian literature.
I need to read him. Damn, Pride and Prejudice is a famous one.
Pride and Prejudice is Jane Austen. Something else.
No, so it's not this one. Wait.
Crime and Punishment.
Yeah, this one. Pride and Prejudice is the one with the series. It's true. Yeah.
You should read it.
Crime and Punishment. Yeah.
It's very nice.
Because everybody tells me stop laughing. It was a genuine mistake. It was. Everybody who read this one told me that it's amazing.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's another kind of author that I want to read everything. He's long dead, of course, but everything. I've never read a bad book on that he's made.
But why is it special about him? Is like the metaphors or maybe life lessons? Because
his writing is different. You really go deep into where he's leading you. And it's like the psychology of the characters is so deep. He has this view on what it is to be human, So it's so interesting. And he's Russian, right? And he depicted the society that was Russia at the time, and it was tough. And he had a very different view on things. He was against the government at the time, and he was
like an anarchist or something like that.
No, because it was Stalin, right? So it wasn't good. So he was in this group of people that was not okay.
Fuck the government. I mean,
so there were this group of people who, like journalists and other people, who discussed. And you know that in this kind of government, you can discuss the government, right?
No, just amen. Yeah.
Exactly, and he was sentenced to death. But when he was, about to be shot, they changed his sentence, and he was sent to prison.
And then he wrote 10 books there.
Yeah, one of his greatest books was written there at the time, and even though he went through all these terrible things, he had this interesting view on life, on things. And that's what makes it so special. Like the deepness, how deep he goes into the psyche and the interactions of society.
Thinking about that, maybe the motivations behind the characters, like you said, are deep. So you understand why they did what they did. Is there a reason some of the stories that we see today, like we were discussing Rings of Power, they're flopping? Because there's a lot of things flopping today. I mean, is the quantity, is the development of characters, what's happening there?
I don't know, but my guess would be that there's too much, right? They're not different. You have more and more of the same.
True.
So at some point you just like Marvel movies. I quit watching all the Marvel movies.
Okay, let's see if we finish at the same time. Ba, 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 ba. Was something like that.
And
Avengers Assemble, and then.
No, I think it was before. I remember when I watched, I think the third movie of Iron Man. That's when I quit.
Oh, it's way before then.
Yeah. I've watched some others later, but that's the feeling I have. We don't have new things, back to originality. Mm-hmm. When you get more and more and more and more of the same, at some point you just give up. Like,
it's really interesting because think, for example, considering the hero's journey, we have Luke Skywalker. Okay, let's go chronologically here. We have Frodo, you know, orphan, had a mentor, then had a call to action, blah blah blah, you know, big mission. The same thing with Luke Skywalker, with Harry Potter. But it's like the three stories. We will never say, it's a rip-off. You know, this. No, they even compete. The fans will discuss which one's the best. Of course, it's Lord of the Rings. But anyways, I haven't even asked you about Harry Potter. I'm sorry.
That's nice.
Okay.
So yeah, some people defend even philosophical things that we never are completely original. We're always working on references. There was always something before us. We're just adding on to things. And that's what makes them so different. They have the hero's journey, like this formula, but they're completely different. They have their personality, you know. So that's not a problem. But with what's happening nowadays, like we're always revisiting things that have already been done, like the Matrix. I'm a huge fan of the first movie. It's amazing. The second one's okay, the third not so much. But then like 20 years later, let's do another one. Really, why? You don't need to do that, you know? It's better to create something new. It could be based off of the Matrix, have the same vibe, the same ideas, but in a different approach. You know, like recreating something, but always adding on to this thing.
Have you, okay, now I'm gonna put my tinfoil hat for a good reason. Have you ever had the feeling, Carol, that sometimes they think in terms of trying to get success, they had to destroy a well-established character, I don't know, maybe out of nostalgia? I'll give a clear example, like Indiana Jones, that they made another movie, or Matrix. Matrix is a good example. So let's make another movie where the story is not quite the same. The protagonist now is not the most important thing there. There are other elements, and that's it. You know, or no, I'm just getting paranoid.
No, I guess they're always working with people's nostalgia. You know. Because people like Star Wars, for example. It was huge, right?
Yeah.
It's not my favorite, but I respect it. It was huge, and then now they're making more and more movies, more and more TV shows. But because and recreating some old characters, even the one that died, right? Like Leia. But they're working on nostalgia. Same thing with the Matrix, the Lord of the Rings. There are speculations they're going to make a new movie.
No, it's already in production. The Hunt for Gollum.
Yeah, and then they're gonna use Aragorn. Of course, they're trying to even what they did in the Hobbit.
Sir Ian McKellen is 100 years old, and
they're trying to use. There was a Marvel movie with the three versions of Spider-Man.
Oh, that was awesome.
It was nice, but
it's a pure nostalgia, beautiful.
Nostalgia, yeah.
I was so happy there. I felt like a killer.
You see, that's why they do it. Because when you say like, I love it, you know.
Yeah. This is very interesting because the line is very thin between doing a fan service that people say, nice for you doing that, and then really again. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Carol, of they ever making, I don't know, an adaptation of Silmarillion?
I hope that never happens.
Oh, you are one of those, okay.
I hope it never happens.
I had high hopes, you know, I was hoping for a series, something like this, but after Rings of Powers, I guess they would just, you know, because it's gonna be public domain eventually. Yeah,
that's my fear. But I think I have a thing with the Silmarillion because
it's really hard to read for the first time.
But it's amazing. It's one of the most amazing things that I've ever read. And it's too complex to adapt. You know, and it's not like a straight line. It's like a whole history of a world.
It's like adapting the Bible, and I'm not overreaching. When there is that movie of the Bible, that very old movie. I guess it's from the 70s. I don't know. When they're trying to describe the creation, is really different because it's abstract. How can they display that like a Louis Vuitton singing a song?
Exactly, it's gonna look like rap.
It's gonna be like,
yeah, it's some that's a media that works on paper, reading, because it happens here in your mind. They could do something, they could try, but it's very hard to imagine they're doing something good, you know.
Imagine when I was reading, I couldn't imagine a face of the Iluvatar. I imagine like I don't know, when we are reading we normally imagine something, but imagine they feel like Morgan Freeman coming to the screen and I am God, and then things starts to pop up
because it is abstract and it's supposed to be beyond their comprehension.
Yeah. So
but
I'll be honest with you. Don't hate me. Imagine who is that? It's not Fingolfin or Finarfin, the one that hurts Morgoth.
I think that's Fingolfin.
Fingolfin, yeah, the one that he Morgoth stabs on.
Yeah.
him. Imagine watching that scene.
No, there are many elements to provide for epic scenes. I know, but it's a delicate.
Yeah. So okay, and any hope that we will see more adaptations of these books in a nice way, or we're lost?
No, I have no hopes.
Okay, thank you guys. No, I'm joking. Okay, about books in general now, what do you think is the future now? What's gonna happen? For example, artificial intelligence, is that gonna be any threat for authors or editors or readers somehow in terms of creation?
No, I think people are afraid of being replaced by AI, but you will only be replaced by it if you don't do a good job. You know, it's like all the revolutions we had, like
makes sense.
Revolution. The only people who lost their jobs were the people who did not adapt or did not learn how to work with these machines. And AI is just that. It's a tool to help you.
I just had a terrible idea
to be more productive, maybe. But if you're updated and if you're always improving, there's no chance, of artificial intelligence replacing what is to be human, And especially in writing, it's a lot of art as well, and humanity put into words. So I don't think it's a threat, unless you don't keep up with it and you don't use it in your favor. Then it could be a problem. And as for books in general, like I said, paper books, I don't think they're ever going to be done. I think it will be more and more niche, but they will exist. Another thing that happens because our attention span is so limited nowadays because of social media and screens all the time, and we're always in this fast pace. We want to be productive and we want information very quick and very fast. So this is interfering on the books we produce, because we're always producing shorter books now. It's very hard to produce those big ones, but again, there is public for that, like fantasy books. You have lots of big ones. So they will exist, just maybe in a smaller proportion for a specific kind of public. I think digital books will continue, being a trend where we're not going back from that. And another thing that I see growing a lot, and I think will have more importance in the next years, is audiobooks. Because a lot of people are preferring to listen. Even people who sometimes don't like reading, and because reading again is like you have to put some effort, you have to take some time.
Like they go for a jog.
Yeah, people are listening to something while doing something else. So they're multitasking all the time. So so they can consume more stories, and then that's another topic. But that's how I see. We will still have print, paper books. We will have digital books and audiobooks, and I think there will always be a place for everyone. I
said I had a terrible idea here, because we have this essentialist view. This is a real piece of art from Picasso. Oh, it actually was made by AI. You say, So imagine I go to artificial intelligence and I say, please write a book for me in the style of Tolkien. Or it's not the same. Even if
You're not joking.
collecting even collecting all the data available, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah, because all the artificial intelligence tools that we have are trained on like an average. They will produce something average. What's the average of information that we have? They will never go beyond average, or they will take a long time to go beyond average, and that's where we lie,
Yeah, we are more adaptable with that. Okay, so we have hope, at least in these terms, I hope we're both wrong and they adapt Silmarillion in an amazing way.
I hope.
But
maybe, but
okay.
Not so positive.
Carol, thank you so much. We could talk for hours, especially about the books. I think we should have an episode just about Silmarillion, and we could discuss some of the chapters.
For hours, yeah.
No, it would be amazing. There are some stories that are, final message to everyone watching us.
Well, thank you everyone for your time. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
And keep up reading. It's very good.
Yeah, I have to. I think like today's a good day to continue that. Get my whiskey, it's a cold day.
No matter your preference, what's important is that you keep reading and retrieving information and reading good stuff.
And share this with a friend too.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for watching us. Don't forget, this episode is going to be on Spotify tomorrow. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, grab a book, and have a beautiful night. See you next week on our next episode of Talking Times. Bye-bye.